little Mikey's red snake hat thrown, his boot thrown, his cell phone thrown, his cell phone cord cast aside. His head was still warm. He's melting the snow around his bald head and his bloody mouth. That bullet in his head. His left pocket flipped out inside out. Judge, this is brutal. It's been saying this all along. This is cold-blooded, and Mr. Beckman needs to be held accountable. You heard testimony about Mr. Beckman's behavior that morning. It's both scary and indicative of someone who needs to be held accountable for this horrible violence in this community and the disregard of little Mikey Biggs. So given those considerations, Judge, and all that the court saw throughout the course of this trial, all the evidence before it, the jury verdict, and for what? Senseless. So, Your Honor, we think the state believes it is appropriate to impose, again, on count 2, 100 years to the state prison, and on count 3, the tampering, 10 years to the state prison, and run those counts consecutively. Thank you, Judge.
A couple factors I look at. The first is they punish each offender commensurate with the nature and degree of harm caused by the offense and to hold an offender accountable. I need to protect the public, reduce crime, and increase the public sense of safety by incarcerating violent offenders and serious repeat offenders. I need to provide restitution, reparation, and restoration to the victim of the offense. And I need to encourage and provide opportunities for the offender's self-improvement to provide rehabilitation and reintegration of offenders back into the community. And the court always wants to focus on that last one whenever possible. And I will say there are some opportunities, I think, to improve, I think Mr. Beckman's odds in life, in that I recognize that it's clearly he has some, likely not fully addressed mental health issues from the pre-sentence investigation. He has a long-standing substance abuse history. I recognize, he probably comes from a socioeconomic background that hasn't given him a lot of advantages in life, and partially explains why he's here. I recognize that he's a father of children, and I know he's talked in court about a desire a couple times to get this resolved quickly in hopes that he might have had a chance to go back to camp and fight for his parental rights, I think, with respect to the younger children. And I know he's got a family who clearly care about him and are watching today. So I recognize that it's, that Mr. Beckman is more than his offense here. And that he does have some things that, provide over his improvement as a person. I think with all that said though, I think the problem in a case such as this is that you take all that, and normally I look at that and I look at the offense conduct and that need to protect the public and the need to punish and hold someone accountable, commensurate with the nature and degree of harm. And I don't know that I could put in words the enormity of the weight of that side of the scale here. Mr. Biggs, who also has a family, who loves him, who came here to speak on his behalf, who are here in the courtroom. And I'm glad they came because I think a lot of times this case is kind of portrayed as if Mr. Biggs had nobody. And I've never really talked with him in the car. Mr. Biggs is never seen again. He was lured out there to die, is what I think the evidence showed. I think that's consistent with the jury verdict. And luring someone out to a place, again, shows a level of planning and calculation, as the state indicated, that I think weighs very heavily and suggestive of significant risks to the community. Also, when I'm looking at these things, the other thing I find an aggravation is that after Mr. Biggs' death, you and Mr. Harvell are going around town, living it out, spending money, like it's going out of style, you're at a casino the same night of Mr. Biggs' death, hanging out at a casino, with the same, group of people. And, I think it reflects that, at least in that moment, I'm not gonna say where your heart is now, but in that moment, you didn't care about Mr. Biggs' death. You didn't care that he lost a life. All you had was, cool, I've got some money. And I think that is, very much aggravating, very reflective of the need to punish, and also the concern for public safety, because the willingness to participate in this kind of scheme, to me, speaks of a real risk for other folks. out there in the community. So when I weigh all those factors together, I think that the state sentence is an appropriate one, with I think just a couple small modifications. So for count 2, deliberate homicide, I am going to, by pursuant to the felony murder rule, I'm going to sentence you to the Montana State Prison for a term of 100 years with none of that time suspended. For count 3, tampering through fabricating physical evidence, I'm going to sentence you to Montana State Prison for a term of 10 years with none of that time suspended. I will run those two concurrent because I do agree that it's all part and parcel of the same course of conduct in this particular instance. I am going to recommend that prior to, I'm not going to put a parole restriction. The state hasn't asked for one here, but I am going to recommend that prior to receiving parole, that at minimum you complete substance abuse treatment consistent with what the prison may recommend, or the Department of Corrections, that you complete programming focused on criminal thinking and accountability, and that you obtain a high school equivalency